Hello, this is Levi and Salomão video series on Brazilian antitrust law. In this video, we will discuss how CADE evaluates remedies when a proposed merger is deemed harmful to competition. When undertaking a merger review, CADE considers whether the benefits of the transaction outweigh any potential harm it causes to competition. If the merger is pro-competitive or neutral from a competition standpoint, CADE will clear it without restrictions. If the merger harms competition, CADE has two alternatives. Either it clears the transaction with restrictions, or it blocks the transaction, since competitive harm cannot be adequately addressed by less restrictive means. These restrictions, so-called remedies, are usually classified into structural and behavioral remedies. Structural remedies usually involve the divestment of assets such as a viable business unit, a shareholding stake, or intellectual property rights. As such, these are usually irreversible one-off measures designed to have an immediate impact on the market. More important, they do not require continuous monitoring by the authority. Behavioral remedies, on the other hand, are usually temporary and require constant monitoring by the authority. They usually entail obligations of commercial, financial, or economic practices for the parties involved in the transaction. Examples of these obligations include maintaining separate accounting or legal activities, refraining from adopting discriminatory practices, suspending or eliminating exclusivity clauses in commercial relations, or even supplying inputs or access to key assets to vertically related competitors. Remedies can be either imposed unilaterally by CADE or negotiated with the parties. In case parties would like to propose remedies, they can submit a draft of a merger control agreement during pre-filing stage to up to 30 days after the transaction is challenged by the General Superintendents. If a structural remedy is proposed, the assets which may be divested must be kept segregated and functional until the sale is made. This means that the parties must undertake efforts to keep the work and sales forces mobilized, to maintain supply contracts and the performance of active distribution channels, and otherwise maintain the business in working order. If deemed necessary, CADE may nominate a trustee to manage the business until the sale is made. If a structural remedy is proposed or agreed on, parties must make the necessary efforts to divest the assets and can present a potential buyer at any stage of the proceeding, even after a decision is issued.
According to its guidelines, CADE prefers structural remedies over behavioral ones because the source of the competitive problems usually lies in the structural changes of a relevant market, so they tend to be more effective. Also, structural remedies entail lower monitoring costs and less risk of market distortions. If structural remedies are deemed ineffective or disproportionate in a given case, behavioral remedies may be adopted instead. Generally, behavioral remedies are more suitable for vertical integrations since they can often be used to address concerns raised by this type of transaction, such as reducing the risk of vertical foreclosure while preserving the efficiencies generated by the merger. The merger involving the acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney, cleared by CADE in 2019, is an interesting example of CADE's use of remedies during merger review. In this case, parties had agreed to sign a merger control agreement committing to divest the assets involved in Fox Sports' production and licensing of basic linear sports channel for pay TV in Brazil, and agreeing to behavioral obligations. Here, however, after parties spent a year unsuccessfully looking for an available buyer for the assets, CADE agreed that it was impossible to divest the business due to lack of available buyers. CADE therefore allowed the transaction to be cleared with the behavioral remedies alone. This was the first time that CADE required a divestment to clear a transaction, but ultimately waived the requirement and allowed parties to close the merger before the divestment took place. It was also the first time CADE agreed to replace a divestment remedy for a behavioral remedy instead.